Fire at a creche in Mayfair, Johannesburg, which killed 4 toddlers, has brought sharp focus on the state of early childhood development centers in the country. A ward committee member is alleged to have raised numerous concerns with the City of Johannesburg Council about safety issues in the area, particularly power cables exposed over houses. The Department of Basic Education is responsible for ensuring universal availability, adequate quality and equitable access to inclusive learning opportunities for children. These responsibilities include ensuring that these centers are health and safety compliant, resourced and operate legally. Are these cross-checks being done at ECD centers and creches in the country? Well, we discuss this now with Director for the Center for Early Childhood, Professor Eric Atmore, and Writer ECD Coordinator, Tshepo Mantje. Good morning, Tshepo. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika.
Good morning, Ms. Chaba. Thank you so much for having us.
And good morning, Professor. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, Ms. Chaba, and to your viewers.
Now, firstly, Tshepo, let's start here. Could you paint a picture of the current landscape of ECD centers, especially in disadvantaged areas, communities? Are they accessible? Are they adequately regulated, monitored, and well-resourced?
Yeah. Ms. Chaba, we can look around our own communities to see what the landscape looks like, in that early childhood development has largely been an informal sector. So umama can decide to start their own center in their backyard. And for many years, this has run unchecked. However, a couple of years ago, the Department of Social Development, which was holding early childhood development at the time, they moved early childhood development from DSD to the Department Department of Basic Education. And the Department of Basic Education is right now working on registering early childhood development centers. But they are coming into a sector that currently has over 40,000 ECD centers in the country, and it's believed that the number is actually more than this because we weren't able to reach all the ECD centers in the census that was made. But the shocking statistic here is that currently over 40% of them remain unregistered, which is a alarming number, considering that many young children, millions of young children, are at these ECD centers. But even with that, that's the one regarding access to the centers. There's still many millions of young children who are left outside of the ECD learning space. So the DBE has a big task ahead of them to ensure that all ECDs are registered and all young children are protected within them.
And I'd like to bring the professor in here with regards to this. I mean, with the government having transferred responsibility in 2022, Professor, to the Department of Basic Education, would you say that this was a good move? And secondly, what has been done so far?
I said, Chaba, it was the good move, it was the right move, and it should have been done in 1994. ECD should never have been under social development. The sad thing is that that recommendation was made to government in 1994, and it took around 28 years for government to transfer it. So it's been a brilliant move, and we are already seeing the benefits. I think the situation, as Tshepo indicates, is dire. You know, we have thousands upon thousands of ECD centers that are not compliant, and that places young children in danger, as we saw in the tragedy in Mayfair. And both from Tshepo and myself, we must express our condolences to the families of those children who died. It was totally unnecessary. Basic education has made some efforts, but totally inadequate. I think they could do much more if there was the political will to put young children first and ECD first. That political will has been absent since 1994. There's now a much greater advocacy push to get government to fulfill their constitutional mandate. So we're making progress, but it's far too slow. And I'm afraid we're going to have more tragedies as we had in Mayfair and where we've had in other parts of the country, where preschool children fall down pit latrines and drown. This is clearly as a result of a total lack of political will to put young children first.
Now, Tshepo, I see you nodding in agreement with the professor. So what should be the top priorities when it comes to early childhood development, especially in underserviced communities?
Yes. Tshepo, thanks for that question. And I want to get quite practical about the challenges that we are facing. So with regard to registration, there are many challenges we're facing, particularly at local government level, that is stopping people from getting registered. Yes, the department wants people to get registered, but because it's been such an informal sector, it means we find centers that are in corrugated iron structures, shacks, back rooms. So the infrastructure, the resourcing is not there. So local government in the Constitution, Schedule 4 Part B, says they should be supporting childcare facilities. But also we know things such as infrastructure, basic services, zoning, rezoning, land use. All of that is local government responsibility.
Now tell me something, just break it down for me a little bit before you continue. So when you say that the registration, they make it very difficult for these centers to register, what does that process of registration actually look like?
Great. Yes, let me break it down to simplify it. So the Department of Basic Education would say there are certain standards that a center should have, right? This is with regard to space. X amount of children require X amount of square meters per space. There needs to be X amount of bathrooms for the amount of children that are there. But in particularly rural informal settlements, centers are not charging, and if they're charging very little. The children that are going there are not able to pay, so that the practitioners then are unable to fix what is going on in their context to meet those standards. Local government has the ability and resourcing to support that infrastructure upgrading, building of new centers, so local governments can do. We find that a lot of, particularly in this Mayfair situation, there was electrical issues. And electricity, basic services, sanitation is a local government situation. We also found out that this space is in Ward 58, which has been listed as a high priority risk zone, which the city of Johannesburg was meant to go and address, which was also not done. So it's speaking to the understanding of the role of local government in supporting the infrastructure and registration process, because we cannot get to the registration within the DBE if those are not fixed. And many of the centers in our most poor situations cannot get there without the support required.
Now, Professor, I mean, I'm keen to know what exactly it would take. But now, if we look at, we've got even greater challenges when you think about the fact that last month was Autism Awareness Month, now, which is observed every single year in April. But would you say that the government is well equipped when it comes to ECD in supporting and providing accessibility and being inclusive to all students, especially those with special needs?
Tshepo, clearly no. Government intervenes and acts in the ECD at 3 levels. As Tshepo said, at municipal level, and that's where one of the problems lie. We cannot get land use permission, we cannot get rezoning, fire and safety is not checked, and this is what resulted in the tragedy in Mayfair. At a provincial level, government is responsible for the staffing ratios, for the learning program, and so on. And at national level, government is responsible for ensuring police clearances are there for staff and adults working in an ECD center, and for funding from our tax revenue. So at all 3 levels, there have been failures. And it all comes down to we don't live in a society which puts young children first. You know, in South Africa, since 1994, we've had 30 ECD policies, plans, and strategies developed. But we have never developed any of those. For example, with grade R, which is still within the early childhood development realm, that proposal for grade R was put to government in 1994, and it only eventuated in the Bella Bill, which was passed by Parliament last year. So we really have to get our advocacy right, which we are doing largely, and get government to commit to putting its youngest citizens first. We can do it. We've got about 100 ECD non-profits around the country providing services. They generally do good work. but we need government support.
Yeah, and I'd like to bring you in here, Tshepo, as the professor has indicated that the situation, and you've indicated, is dire. The reality is that not all children will have access to traditional ECD centers. So what alternatives are actually there for non-center ECD programs?
Yes, that's also a misunderstanding. We often think of ECD as a place or where a child goes. When we talk about early childhood development, we're actually talking about a period of time between birth and 6 years old and the rapid development that a child goes through at that time. So there are different types of ECD services that are provided to meet that need. So an early learning program is what we are often used to, but there are others like day mothers, and the situation in Mayfair is actually within the realm of a day mother, where they were taking care of fewer children within their home. There are toy libraries and other sort of resources. But that brings me to the point I want to make around the registration of the different types of services, which is what's also important. And the responsibility is on us also as South Africans to check that. Are we taking our children to a place that is registered? Because we are also not checking whether they are being registered or not. And I want to bring viewers to the attention of what is called the mass registration drive that the Department of Basic Education is currently running. So if you have a young child who is between the ages of 0 and 6 going to an ECD center, engage with what is called this mass registration drive, because anyone can go online, a quick Google, you will find a link which you can do a self-assessment as a ECD provider, service provider, and list and register yourself through the mass registration drive, which is trying to address the lack of registration directly.
All right, that's really good to know. But let's talk about the parent, because I do fully understand that we as parents have to take responsibility for where we leave our kids. But the reality of the fact is that, you know, there are many people who are in situations where they can't do that cross-check. They actually don't even have the money to go to a registered institution or center or whatever the case is, because they themselves are living in a financially dire situation and they have to go to work, as in the case of one of the mothers of the 4 deceased children. How do we now navigate around this sensitively, also bearing in mind the circumstances of some people, or many people in South Africa? Professor?
Mr. Chaba, yes. You know, I think parents do have a serious responsibility. Before you place your child in any facility, whether it's in Sandton or in an informal settlement, visit the center, speak to the principal, find out how does the center operate? How does it function? Are the teachers trained? Is the center compliant? And yes, you can go onto the digital world to check that, but ask the principal. Ask the principal to show you the compliance certificate, which by law has to be displayed in the ECD center. And if a parent is not happy with what they see, for example, let's say there is loose electrical wires, walk away from it. Don't just place your child in an ECD center simply because you are desperate, because in some cases, you could be placing your child in a very dangerous situation. Adjacent to that, I think what our viewers need to know is that we've got just on 200,000 entrepreneurial, committed women, predominantly women in this country, looking after our children. And to them, the country owes a great deal. They are building the system, but they're not getting the support that they need, either at national government level, provincial government level, or at municipal level, as Tshepo mentioned. And we really need to invest in our young children. I do not like this phrase that the children are our future. They're not. The children are today. Children are suffering today. They're falling down pit latrines. They're not getting a proper learning program. They are malnourished. They are underweight for age. So we really have to change our mindset about how we see children in society.
And then, Tshepo, how do we empower the day mothers, for instance? Because now we need to start looking more closely at, excuse me, alternative solutions, as you rightfully have listed some of them. Because if we say that the government is not coming to the party and not fast enough because children are dying in this country, how do we then better equip those who are providing those services outside of the centers?
Yes. I think collective power at community level is one of our best bets. as people concerned about our own community development? How do we come together? There are groups such as community ECD forums, parent group, church leaders. How can these different sects of communities come together to advocate for the young child? And particularly look at where are the access points, the pressure points in government. At local governments, there are things such as the Integrated Development Plan, which is a community-built plan that people can participate in. And again, mentioning the Bana Pele mass registration. This is an online resource, meaning that registration is available to everyone today, right now. There are 3 tiers of registration: bronze, silver, and gold. At gold, it means you have everything that is needed to register and you are fully registered. At bronze, it means that you have been able to have a police clearance and you are allowed to take care of children at that level. And that is a self-assessment that can be done. So how can we as communities come together and identify these opportunities and collectively work towards them?
All right. And now, Professor, just to wrap it up here, at the Center for Early Childhood Development, how do you intend on increasing the capacity of individuals, of organizations and communities in delivering early childhood development programs and services?
Tshepo, we are just one of about 100 non-profit organizations around the country that are doing really, really good work. So our responsibility is predominantly training teachers and principals in how to run their ECD center, both from a management business point of view, but also from an educational learning program point of view. Then what nonprofits like the Center for Early Childhood Development do is we provide educational equipment, we provide the resources to enable the teachers to work with young children, and we advocate. The advocacy across the country has increased significantly in the past 5 years. We've won a few court cases where we've taken government to court, and the courts have ruled the government has to provide services. You know, what really bothers me is that we signed, as a country, we signed the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. We have not implemented it. We've signed the African Charter on the well-being of children, and we haven't implemented it. And we've got these 30-odd policies which we haven't implemented.
All right,
we really need to wake up.
We're going to have to leave. I think that is a very high note to end it on, and for sure the government is definitely listening.